Hey everybody, welcome. Eugene Hughes Motorized. Thank you for watching here. So you're watching the video either because you searched for a solution to your rear wheels not turning on your motorized scooter, or you just like looking at this old ugly face of mine. But if you got the problem, you just built your bike, the rear wheel's not turning, hopefully I can offer you some help here, okay? What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over the list of possible causes. We got to figure out, is a problem in the rear wheel? Well, duh, it's not turning, but hey, it's connected to the engine. Or is the problem in the engine? So I'm going to go over the list of the problems here, what we need to do to figure out which end of the horse to look at, and then troubleshoot and find the exact problem as to why your damn wheel's not turning and help you fix it, okay? So come on in, let's take a look at this here, see what we got to do. One of the things a lot of brand new engines have, the clutch pads here inside the cover there behind the clutch plate are stuck. Brand new, it's made way overseas, sits in a boat, comes over, sits for a while. Time it gets here, those clutch pads are stuck, almost like they're glued in place. The solution is real easy. It involves your butt to fix it, but we'll get to that, okay? Now, another thing you want to look at, we're going to look at here, is inside the drive sprocket cover here, we may have a problem. The drive sprocket cover might not be installed correctly. There's a piece called a bucking bar and a little ball bearing that goes inside the output shaft here that need to be in there. Is your clutch actuating properly? And is your clutch cable adjusted properly? Now, the rear wheel here, couple of problems we can have here. Quite often it relates to installation of the sprocket. If your sprocket wasn't installed correctly, quite often what can happen is the brake arm could be striking one of the heads of the bolts here, and that will keep things from turning. Or your dust cap here. You need to either trim the dust cap to where it fits on the inside of your sprocket and rotates freely, or open up the hole in the sprocket to where it fits over the dust cap. Me, for whatever reason, I choose to just go ahead and grind off the outer side of the dust cap to make things fit. But we'll get to that. Now, one other problem we might have as a result of taking the brake arm off, putting things back together again, you might have your coaster brake, the guts of the hub, all wonked up. So we'll go through that, okay? All right, so first thing you want to do, you want to grab the rear wheel. Give it a little pull. Is the rear wheel turning? I mean, if your rear wheel is locked up, well, the problem's in the rear wheel. You might even need to go ahead and disconnect the master link from your chain, pull the chain loose, and then see if the rear wheel's turning. If your rear wheel is turning and doesn't seem to be making any grinding or scraping sounds, we need to take a look at the engine. So the problem could be the brake arm is striking the heads of the bolts, in which case the brake arm is going to need to come off. We're going to need to bend the brake arm out and then bend it back in so we can tie up the strap to the bike here. Let me show you how you do that. Of course, first thing you got to do is remove the nut here. Now, I've just got this on the bike for demonstration purposes. And of course, you're going to want to take the wheel off to do this operation. Here's the stock brake arm. You're going to want to bend it up about right there and then bend it back down so we can tie it in. And here's what it's going to look like when you're done bending here. So you got about a 20-degree bend up, and then you're bending it back so the small hole, we can attach that to the strap that goes to your chainstay. All right, so I'm using a vise here to do it. That's one of the best ways to hold it, because we're going to have to hit it nice and hard here. I'm going to get my big fine adjustment tool out, and yep, we're going to give it some love taps. You're going to want to bend it about 15, 20 degrees. Give it ample room for the brake arm to clear the heads of the bolts. And then you're going to be looking something like this here after the first bend, right? Now see where my middle finger is there? Right there, we're going to have to bend it back down so we can attach the small hole to the brake strap, okay? So I put it back in the vise, and you got to be careful that you don't just bend back what you just bent here. So I started giving a few taps, and then I realized I'd be doing that. So I grabbed a big chisel here, and I'm going to give it some taps whack it on down there, bend it back, and here's the finished result. We're ready to put the brake arm back on, and we got that problem solved. Okay, next up, let's take a look at the next item that could be causing your wheel to be locked up. Now, this is the way the dust cap should be. The dust cap should fit on the inside of that sprocket hole and be allowed to turn. Now, here's an original stock dust cap on it, and if you put the sprocket up against it, it'll bind. Now, I'm just showing you again here a little bit more clear. So you have options. What you can do is grind the inner hole of the sprocket big enough so the dust cap can fit through, or you can go ahead and grind the dust cap itself. I always grind the dust cap. I figure it's thinner metal and it's easier to go. So I'll just lay it down on a surface here, get my scribe me a good line, show me how much meat I need to take off of this thing here. So you've got a couple of options here. I've rigged up this holder here using a 3" by 1/4" bolt with some washers to hold it. That way I can go to my bench grinder and grind it off and make pretty quick work of it here. You want to be careful not to get it jammed down inside between the little shelf on your bench grinder. So don't turn it that way. Turn it this way here and kind of get a glancing blow. I'll grind off the shoulder first and then start going to minimize the outer diameter. Another option is if you got some power, another power tool, you can use a angle grinder here with a flat disc. Be sure and wear your gloves and all that. We don't want you nipping a finger off or gashing your hand, okay? So what you'll do is you just grind along the edge there where the bend is to get that shoulder off, and then start grinding away to get to your scribe line. Now, another way you can do it is old school, is just take a file, take your time, and get it down to the diameter you need. Once it fits through just like that, you're good to go. You can go ahead and put your sprocket on. You should be tearing ass through the neighborhood. Okay, so let's take a look at the inner workings of the hub here. Now, this is an extreme example, but if things aren't lined up correctly inside of your hub, your wheel's going to be locked up. So if we've determined that we've got a problem where it's locked up in there, let's just go ahead and go with what we need to do to just tear everything out, clean it, and inspect it. So the first thing we're going to need to do is take the brake cone off here and pull that out and take a look at everything. So you can use the brake arm on the brake cone, back it up with a 17mm wrench on the other side, and just go ahead and loosen the brake cone. Here, loosen it up, pull it out. Be careful you don't drop any little bits from the bearing. If the bearing got wonky in there, any of the little steel balls. Now this is the brake cone. There's two little holes in there for the tabs, and I'm going to beat that to death. That's very important. Okay, now we've got the outer bearing. Now your sprocket and driver will come out next. You've got a big bearing inside of there. Pull that out. Okay, once you pull that out, then back on the brake side here, let's pull out the brake shoes and what's called the clutch cone. Okay? So we've got everything laid out here. Let's take a look at what we've got. We've got the brake arm. The brake arm goes onto the brake cone. Then you've got the outer bearing. Next up, we have the brake shoes. Now, the brake shoes are expanded or operated by virtue of the brake clutch. Now, here's a closer look at the brake clutch. See the little two tabs at the top? Yep, those little two tabs right there. It's very important that these tabs, yep, these right there, are inserted to the brake cone correctly. So we're going to go over that, but just keep that in mind, and we're going to notice how everything works. Okay, so next up on the list we got there is the driver and sprocket. And you've got the smaller bearing that's on the very outside, and then you've got the bearing that goes on the hub itself here. Now, this wheel had sat outside for about a year and got pretty gunked up. So I just want to show you how the driver threads into the brake clutch and how it works. Okay, so we've got the brake cone and we've got those tabs I keep talking about. So when you backpedal, the driver, the threads on it, forces the brake clutch to move away from the sprocket, and when that moves away from the sprocket, it pushes the brake shoes out. That rubs inside of the hub, and there's your brakes. Okay, so we've got everything cleaned up. I've got fresh grease inside of the hub. I've got the bearing for the sprocket side already greased up and put in. Let's put some grease all over the driver assembly of the sprocket, push it into the wheel. Now let's go to the other side of the wheel, and we're ready to install the brake clutch. Put some grease on the inside of the brake clutch, as well as some grease on the outside of the brake clutch, and let's go ahead and just push that in. Now those two tabs I keep talking about, we want those tabs at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position. Next up, we're going to put the brake shoes in. Now if you notice, the brake shoes have a shoulder on it. So we want the shoulder, the thickest part of that brake shoe, to be on the outside, look the way you're looking at it. So we're going to put the first brake shoe in, got it all covered up with grease. We're putting that at the bottom, the 6 o'clock position. And then we're going to put the other brake shoe, nice and greased up, at the top at the 12 o'clock position. Okay, so if you've got everything fit in there, it should look something like this. This is the brake cone. Now these are the holes where those two tabs that you've got at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position are going to fit into it. Okay. Bearing fits in there. We've got grease inside the race. What you're going to do is you're going to thread the brake cone onto the axle, screw it through, turn it on the other side, keep pushing in. Now when it comes time to push it in there, you want to push it in with the tab holes at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock position. And once you get it seated in there, don't let the brake cone come back out. Keep threading the axle into it, get it snug. I'll use the brake arm to tighten it up, get it tight, work it, slide things back and forth, and then check, see if you got any gap like that, any wiggle room, you need to tighten it up a little bit more. Now what I like to do is get it to where it just about binds and it's a little bit hard to turn and then back it off just a hair. That way things are nice and tight in there and you're not going to have any problem. You want to be careful when you put your wheel back on that it doesn't come loose. So you may need to tighten it up again when it's on the bike. And this should take care of the inside of the hub. Go ahead and put your bike back together and you're on the road if that was your problem. Okay, so let's say that the problem is not in the rear wheel. Everything's working fine in the rear wheel aspect of it. We need to take a look at the clutch, the engine side of this here, okay? So very often with a new engine, the problem lies inside of here. We don't need to go inside of it to fix it, but just let me show you what's going on here. So the clutch lives inside of here. The clutch pads often on these here brand new are stuck. Manufactured overseas, they take the boat ride across, they sit in a warehouse, they come to you. The pads have been sitting a long time here. The clutch pads that are behind this clutch plate will be stuck. And it's a pretty easy fix. How do you get them loose? Easy. You use your butt, okay? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna push the bike. I know the rear wheel's not turning, that's why you're watching this video. So you're gonna be dragging the rear wheel, right? You're gonna give the bike a quick push. Front wheel's gonna be rolling, right? Okay? So you're gonna pull in on your clutch. I know, it's not disengaging, the clutch pads are stuck. Let's get them unstuck. So you're going to give it that quick push, ass into the bike's dragging. Your butt is going to slam down hard on the seat with the clutch pulled in, giving it a quick pop down and forward, popping it, and you're going to pop that clutch loose. Those pads are going to break loose. May take 2 times or so to do it. It's always came loose real quick. You just, you know, hey, with my fat butt slamming down on it, it's easy. But just give it a quick bump, you should break it loose if that's your problem. And if it's not, well, we need to take a look at the clutch adjustment and all that stuff. Come on. What allows the rear wheel to turn is you pull in on the clutch lever, you disengage the clutch. What that does, here's your clutch arm here. You pull in on the clutch, you can see the lever moving, and that will cause the clutch plates here to come out somewhat. Watch this. That is what you want. You want 1/8 of an inch travel here. That means that the clutch plate is coming out and the clutch should be disengaging. As long as you've got that 1/8 inch here, we're good to go. But if the clutch isn't disengaging when you're pulling in on the lever, let's take a look at what the problem could be. Now, if at rest your clutch arm is pointed out, we got a problem inside here Or as well, if your clutch arm is too far in, we've got a problem. Typically, if your clutch arm is too far in, we've got a problem. You probably lost your bucking bar or the bearing inside. So let's take a look at what we've got there. Okay, so here's the bucking bar. So inside of there, you've got the bucking bar and you've got the ball bearing. Quite often, if you don't pay attention when you first take this plate off, the bucking bar could fall out or the little ball bearing falls out. So you got to make sure that the ball bearing is in there. We're going to put a little dab of grease in. Okay, so when your bucking bar is about 1/3 of an inch out, you should be in good shape there. So we've got the bucking bar here. Now there's a chance that your clutch arm may not be properly installed inside the drive cover here. Now notice on your clutch arm, you've got this little groove here, okay? And you've got this flat spot right here. You've got two flat spots. The upper flat spot, and if you look inside of the drive cover, you can see that pin right there. Now that pin will only allow this clutch arm to go in one way. That pin has got to clear this. Then when it turns, it locks in this groove. So if I just drop it right in, it's not going to go. So what I've got to do is turn it. It falls into place. Now it's all the way down. We've got just that little bit of a gap there. And then you can see the flat of the clutch arm here. So now we're ready to install this here. Put a little dab of grease in there as well. If it doesn't have some grease in there, make sure you got some grease, because that's going to be getting a lot of wear against the bucking bar. When you install the drive cover here, you want to make sure that the clutch arm is aimed straight back. We're going to push it against the engine there, and let's go ahead and get our Allen screws in. So when you've got this installed correctly, you will note that the clutch arm is pointed more or less straight back, and you should feel some tension if you press in against the spring. You're going to have about one inch and maybe an inch and a half of travel from where it starts to press, and you can feel some spring tension till it bottoms out. That's a good working clutch there. We know we're in good shape. Okay, like I said, you want to make sure that you don't have any gaps here. If you have a gap here, it's not set up properly. The longest screw on the drive cover is the one that goes all the way through. You want to make sure you have all 3 screws in there. If you don't have all 3 screws in there, you could have a problem. That would cause your clutch not to operate properly. But properly installed, your clutch arm right here is pointed more or less back. Okay, now this is one of the better clutch arms here. It's got a little bit of a bend in it there, and that makes it a little bit line up better for your clutch cable to install. You know, if your clutch cable is kind of aimed here and has to come back around to get it, that makes it harder. So one other little thing we can do, what I like to do here, the cable holder here, I will give it a little bit of a turn, and almost to where we have a little bit of a bind here, but what that does is it gives it a better shot between where it exits the cable holder and where it goes into the clutch arm here. So we're going to push it into the clutch arm here. Now on your lever, you want to make sure that your lever, the adjuster on the lever, is screwed all the way in. All the way, you want to make sure that your cable is pushed all the way into the adjuster on the lever. You want to pull and get all of the slack out of this area here. We don't want any slack there. Quite often what I'll do, I'll use a pair of pliers and pull it here and get a good bite on the pliers and make sure that I've got all the slack taken out. Then I'm ready to go ahead and tighten up my cable. You want to get this fairly snug. If you don't like this cable end dangling out here, you know, catch up on your jeans or whatever, you can take a tie wrap and tie wrap it here and hold that in place. That's just a little comfort thing there. So we want to double check that our clutch is operating correctly. We're going to pull in here and let's see here. We're going to pull in here and you should notice and you can see the clutch plate there. We've got 1/8 of an inch popping out there, so we're good to go. So if your chain is jammed up inside of here, a quick way that you might be able to fix this would be take a board and put it on the top chain here and get you a hammer and give it a good whack, and that should force that chain out. If it doesn't, you're going to need, you can use your spark plug tool here, loosen the nut and pull the sprocket out, fix your chain. Now this is often caused by having too loose of a chain or having one of these spring-loaded chain tensioners to where it allows the chain to get a lot of slop into it. It doesn't take up the slack quick enough and your chain gets jammed. Hey, I hope I helped you out some here. Got your rear wheel turning, got you tearing ass through the neighborhood. If you like my video, you think it's helpful, give me a big fat thumbs up, click that subscribe button. If you got any questions, put them down below. As well, if you need help on getting your little motorized bicycle fixed, I'll put a link down below too on my Facebook group, and you can post pictures and ask help. Either I'll help you or someone on my Facebook page be glad to help you out. Thanks for watching. Y'all come back now, you hear?